1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the increased geopolitical conflict by the United States in Venezuela and recently in Iran is precisely what motivates our side of the House. The world has seen the backlash with the prices of oil and natural gas spiking over $80 to $100 a barrel, which worry the globe of a potential commodity and currency crisis, which can potentially increase the cost of rehabilitation and helping conflict zones that impede and undermine their ability to go into conflict zones and be able to rebuild. This is exactly what motivates our side of the House, and we believe that by abandoning leverage and bargaining chip that you have in that table, you undermine the whole function of that board to begin with. A few strategic observations of top half clash. Number 1, opening opposition is correct that this isn't just about Gaza alone, but failed to explain the comparative of why staying would be better. Because, at best, opening opposition pushes for a sense of urgency and capacity. The path to victory of closing opposition to extend vertically and horizontally is threefold. A, what is this board for? Because I think this characterization is messy and important, and we need to be able to contest this to respond to proposition push. I agree, it's diverse as fuck. Meaning, you have Middle Eastern states like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, and the golden nugget characterization I have to explain why they're staying there and why they shouldn't leave is because they are all within striking range of Iranian and Israeli intercontinental ballistics missiles. That is to say, these Middle Eastern states who are now literally facing the shock and retaliation of Iran, and what we saw before with Israel is that they need US protection in order to not put a target on their back from all three of those, from the United States, from Israel, and Iran. They also need to be able to put pressure on Israel and Iran to not be shady because they are seen as an ally of the United States. Meaning, sure, they're retaliating right now, but that can become more adversarial at the point in which they're no longer under the protection and umbrella of the United States and this collective group. B, the second path to victory is explaining why, as an ordinary intelligent voter, as a value judgment debate which we agree on, why resigning from this is ultimately bad for the world because this does two things. One, it concedes to US hegemonic power and is a capitulation to Donald Trump's insanity. And number two, it's economically bad because it now makes your investment, which is in the billions of dollars, a sunken cost that impedes your ability and backtracks to progress they've already made in Gaza and prevents them from being able to help Latin America with Venezuela and the Middle East with Iran. Because we also understand Iran, in as much as they're kind of shady, is also a conflict area who we have to help. It's not just Palestinians who are being killed. C, the third path to victory is that tendering your resignation is bad optics for these leaders from these countries and undermines the interest and effort that they've already made for the board. Number two, let's deal with opening government. Opening government is assertion city. They say, oh, you don't have power, you don't have accountability. Donald Trump is the one calling the shots. I have three mechanisms to respond to this. A, yes, it's headed by Trump, but they literally still vote. There are certain majoritarian and democratic veto systems in place to be able to prevent them from going all out crazy. That is why, when this was founded early 2026, they decided to be able to allocate it primarily to Gaza. But since what everyone agreed on and what I brought to you in my pre-oration, we now have new and more proximate and important and urgent conflict zones, like that in Latin America with Venezuela, that in the Middle East with Iran, which mean there must be a way or a capacity to reallocate or question these resources. I'm not saying abandon Gaza, but this debate, because of how the board is structured, is also about where and how we allocate it. B, the second mechanistic response is that them leaving is a lost opportunity cost that makes it significantly difficult to help those conflict zones. We think that they can do this aggressively by putting pressure on Donald Trump to be able to actually have redress, not just for what they did, given them funding Israel and helping Gaza, but also helping Iran, Venezuela, and all these other regions facing that particular backlash. This in itself is important because the US doesn't have infinite money. Yes, they're the strongest military in the world, but they're also significantly depleted given the rising inflation and cost of commodities and imports that they're brunting and they're facing. We think this hard principled push to be able to show that we have a collective bargaining capacity and leverage ultimately is important to help them in check. C, the optics and the third mechanism of them leaving makes the world freak out. Because I agree with CG. There are a bunch of like random countries there, right? Like some parts of Latin America, Indonesia's part as well. We don't want them to go full protectionist and defensive. We want them to continue putting the money that they committed to be able to help these conflict zones. Because the worst thing to happen is that they go into recluse and don't help the world because they think their borders are their only interest. Side government is a problem-solution mismatch. I don't necessarily know what exactly them leaving is going to do. At best, it's virtue signaling. We're here to make a change. Let's deal with closing government quite quickly. They talk about how just because you can leave, you should. We think that's not necessarily the case. If their push is that Israel will get mad, my response to that is that Israel is likely to not fire at you because they know that you are helping the US put peace in as much as the US is bankrolling Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, leaving does more harm than good. It backtracks the progress we've already made, and leaving is a capitulation to US hegemonic power that undermines what this board is for and ultimately plunges these conflict zones into more hostility and adversity. We are very proud to stand on side negative.